This is Milarepa. He murdered a bunch of people, but what he learned changed his life forever. And the secrets that he learned taught him how to clear all of his very negative karma and allowed him to become a self-actualized and self-realized being in just one lifetime, even though he'd done incredibly negative things and destroyed the lives of many. His courage and his discipline has landed him the title of one of the most revered enlightened masters of all time. And if he could do it, even with all of that crazy karma, then it shows us all that we can too. And in this video, I'm going to share his secrets that he learned throughout his life and show you how you can do it too. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite cup, put some tea in it, and allow me to tell you his story. So, Milarepa, he had a hard childhood, pretty dark youth, you know. When he was 7, his father died, and they were a pretty rich family, so their life was wonderful, everything was great. But upon the father's request, he instructed some relatives to look after the estate because he knew he was going to die, and then hand it over to the son, Milarepa, when he was of age. But when the father died, the relatives took the property and mistreated the bereaved family and essentially put them into slavery. They became their slaves. Now his mother, Milarepa's mother, was bitter, so bitter. So she sent Milarepa to train in black magic to wreak revenge on those who'd blighted her life. Now, she was given her wish. Milarepa proved adept at the practices he was taught and unleashed a tide of destruction, killing many. But, you know, anybody who's sensitive to life will naturally begin to feel a deep sense of regret and fear around the consequences, perhaps even beyond death, of his actions. And I'm sure we've all felt into that a little bit in our lives. Maybe not as dramatic, but still, it's there, right? We fear perhaps what's going to happen to us, the consequences of our actions. So he did the only thing he knew to do, and that was choose the spiritual path to purify himself. And he went in search of a teacher, and he found a man called Marpa. And Marpa was a spiritual master, and he took one look at Milarepa and he knew what this man was about. He downloaded his whole karmic journey. He knew this guy had a lot of negative karma to work off. So Milarepa swans in, and he asked Marpa for the teachings to help him become enlightened in this life. And Marpa obliged and says, okay, sure, my son. First though, go and plow my field. So he did. And when he finished, he said, okay, I've plowed the field. Very good. Now, give me the teachings. And Marpa, Milarepa's guru, said, not yet. First, I need you to build my son a house. Milarepa's like, all right, come on. What's this guy on? But he's thinking, you know, whatever. I've got a lot of karma to clear. I know that I do. I've caused so much damage. If this is the way to get the teachings, I'll do it. So he spends 2 years building this, you know, 3-story building for his son. And once it's finished, he comes back and says, okay, Marpa, I've done it. Here's your son's house. I've definitely worked hard enough for this now. Give me the teachings. Marpa inspects the house and finds a tiny, tiny fault with it. One stone just slightly out of place, and tells Marpa to pull the whole house down brick by brick and start again. But this time, make it a bigger house. Now, obviously, Milarepa is pissed. He's starting to question his teacher's sanity. He's seen all of Marpa's rich students come in, swallow in, you know, and get initiated into the teaching straight away. And he's left there basically a slave, but he angrily accepts his fate and builds another house. Now, you have to put yourself in Milarepa's shoes here, because at this point, most of us would be like, this, I'm off, mate. But he's fearing eternal damnation, isn't he? In the hell realms. He can see that that's the potentiality of his life because of the amount of people that he killed. And he knows the only way to stop this is to purify himself, to purify these karmas. Karma means action, to purify these actions with the practices which he knows Marpa has. So he says, fine, I'll do it. So I'll build another house. And so he does. And again, this takes another few years. Marpa then inspects it and says, great, now I want 4 towers on the house, on each corner of the building. And so Milarepa does as Milarepa does, and builds and continues to build, knowing that one day he's going to get the practices. But years and years and years go by, and Milarepa is still building houses and towers for Marpa, looking after their baby, cooking, washing, cleaning, everything. And he does this for 14 years. And as the years roll by, he sees that he's beginning to age, and he knows he doesn't have much time left to get the teachings and make amends for all of the pain that he caused and the negative karma he created. So he pleads with Marpa's wife to do something. He thinks, Marpa's wife has good standing with the boss. Let's see what she can do. So the wife does take pity on him and takes Marpa's signatory stamp. Back in the day, they would have had a wax stamp, wouldn't they? I'm sure you've seen them. And writes a letter to the disciple of Marpa, who can also initiate into the teachings. And she tells Milarepa to go and give this letter to him, and he'll teach you. So she's been a bit naughty there. She's pretended that she's Marpa and written a letter so that he can get the teachings. And so he takes that letter gratefully and does just that. He gets initiated, and practices and the teachings are given to him, and so is the sadhana. Sadhana is your daily spiritual practice. And he practices for a while, but nothing happens, which leaves the monk who initiated him thinking, what's going on? This stuff works. Why isn't it working? So he finally comes to his senses and fronts up to Milarepa and says, where did you get this letter from that told me to initiate you? And squeamishly he confesses, I got it from the wife of Marpa, not Marpa himself. To the monks thinking, oh God, I've been duped, and I've been teaching my master student without his consent. So he drags Milarepa all the way back to Marpa and bows down in total apology to the master. You have to imagine, this is the teacher that's taught him. He owes him so much, and he says, I'm so sorry. I was tricked into giving him the practices. Please forgive me. Well, Marpa loses it, and in a fit of rage kicks Milarepa to the curb and says, you're not fit for this. Get out. As you can imagine, Milarepa now knows the game is up. He's screwed. All those years wasted and nothing to show for it. So in a fit of utter desperation, he says, okay, if I can't have the teachings, then I'm going to end it. I'm going to take my own life. And Marpa says, very well. At least now that you're willing to die for the teachings, you're ready. He initiates him. And since determination and willpower were not really going to be a problem for Milarepa, as you can imagine, he had the determination to build houses after houses year upon year. So Milarepa sat day and night with the teachings and the practices and the sadhana, and he became fully enlightened within a year, which is totally unheard of in the tradition. But Marpa knew this all along. He knew that to purify himself of all of that negative karma, Milarepa would have to work selflessly, doing what we would now call karma yoga, the yoga of action. Karma means action, which is essentially actions in service to something greater than ourselves. So all the time, Milarepa was asking for the teachings and thinking he wasn't getting them, but actually he was. They just didn't look the way that he thought they should. Marpa also knew that, and he knew that Milarepa had a view of how the teacher should look and be, like ultra compassionate, like we see nowadays on YouTube and stuff like this. And although Marpa was being compassionate, because every time Milarepa would swan off and run away in a hissy fit, he would pray every night, may my student return to fulfill his karmic work, because he knew that without it, he would manifest himself in the hell realms for lifetimes and lifetimes. But that's not all. Without all of this karma yoga, Marpa knew the practices would have not been of any benefit to Milarepa, hence why they didn't work with the other monk, until he had done the preparatory work of purifying his karmas. But because he did, He spent 14 years selflessly building and serving somebody else. He was able to fast track his path once he did receive the teachings. That's why it only took a year, once he'd been initiated, to become a fully realized being. So there are a few lessons here for us. Number one, don't create expectations on how the path should be for you. Every person has different karma and therefore needs different work. Secondly, don't expect the teacher to be the way you think they should be, because this will become a massive limitation for you. And three, selfless service and karma yoga is one of the best ways to fast track your journey and increase Kundalini in the system. And I'm starting to see this in my life as I pick up tools and help my teacher build his ashram along with many other people, but also as I'm helping my dad just with stuff with the loft. But there is one more twist in this tale. After Milarepa became enlightened, he had a vision in which a sacred deity came and gave him some deeply profound teachings, the like of which even his master, Marpa, didn't even have. And upon telling Marpa of the teachings, Marpa said, "Where on earth did you get these? Even I don't have these teachings." And in total humility, he bowed down at Milarepa's feet and became his disciple. So this is a really powerful story of turning huge amounts of darkness into light. It's a story of one man's pure grit and determination for enlightenment, and because of this, he became one of the most famous yogis and holiest saints ever to have lived, and disciples sought him out from far and wide. But not only that, this story is so powerful that we're still talking about him now in the tradition today. It's a story of beautiful perseverance, and it shows that whoever you are and whatever karma you have, if you're determined and you're willing to do the work, you can also be self-realized in this lifetime. Now, in the same way, our karma's not going to be anywhere near as much as Milarepa's. And this isn't a mythical story. This is a real documented man. It really happened. So it goes to show you that if you really want it, if you want to self-actualize in this life, anybody, and I mean anybody, can do it if they're willing to do the work. And if that's you, you can sign up for our free training series, and the link for that is down below. I can guarantee we'll have a lot more fun and your path will be a lot easier than his. Maybe you are interested in the yogic path and you want to know exactly what it takes to become enlightened. Well, if so, feel free to watch our video here. It's the 8 stages to full enlightenment. But whatever you choose to do, lots of love. Namaste.